a Conservative government to come out and say, we're going to subsidise 30 hours a week of childcare for 1 and 2-year-olds so that mothers can eliminate the time out of work and get back to appearing on GDP balance sheets, is not putting the well-being of a child first.
Nope.
And also Nadim Zahawi, when he was briefly education minister among all his other jobs in and out of government, he wanted to ban homeschooling almost outright, or make it so that it was so difficult to do so that you might as well give up and just shove your kids in a government school where they could be propagandized. So how do we reclaim that entitlement for a parent to talk to their child about topics as sensitive as sex and gender, or just simply
well, we've got to argue for it. We've got to
them?
make the case for it, and we've got to explain, and we've got to, the moral case is on our side. People are shocked about what's happening in schools. There are headlines about it all the time because it is shocking. Because how are we teaching this crazy stuff to our schools about 72 or more genders and all sorts of sexual exploits and deviances and all of that kind of thing? Surely this is not helpful, and it isn't helpful for any child to be exposed to this kind of stuff at a very young age. So the general moral sense of people is that this is wrong and should be stopped. And the government's finally been forced into doing an inquiry into it and come up with some proposals about it. But in terms of education, more and more parents are taking their children out of state schools. And a dominant factor is the sexualization of children, which they don't want. We're involved in, we know about 20 embryonic schools that are being set up by parents up and down the country that are saying, we can't have this anymore. We have to set up Christian schools and actually teach Christian values and teach subjects in accordance with Christian worldview. And of course, that's what originally happened in this country. Schools were founded by Christians. And of course, the Church of England's churches still stand there as testimony to that, but they were sort of kind of handed over to the state in a way. I think that's quite exciting to see because a whole load of new schools and there's demand for them. I was hearing a story the other day about a parent, not a Christian parent, who sort of said, I'm losing my child. She's not the person she used to be. She's depressed. She's withdrawing into herself. The school is really bad for her. Please, can I bring her to your school? Yes, you can come to our school. And 6 months later, you've given my child back. She's boisterous and energetic and full of life and energy and happy. I'm so glad that I was able to do that. And this is the kind of story that we need to see and share and explain. And I think more parents are going to go down this route.
So if there were any other pieces of legislation which seem to be a large impediment to the moral restitution of Britain, what would you say they are off the top of your head?
Impediment. Go on, give me some examples.
Well, obviously, we've got things like the euthanasia bill coming down the pipe.
Right,
We've already discussed the public order bill.
Yep.
Is there anything else on the radar?
I'll tell you one we haven't mentioned is conversion therapy. I think that is a big deal. Again, this is about, like buffer zones, it's about criminalising consensual conversations. That's actually what it's about. When the government did its consultation into conversion therapy, which closed, I think, early last year, they said clearly anything physical done in the name of so-called conversion therapy is already a criminal offence.
Yep.
Therefore, we are talking about criminalising certain types of consensual conversations. Now, again, this is a massive shift down the totalitarian road of sort of, if you dissent, if you express dissent, if you say something that we don't agree with, we're going to reserve the right to criminalise you and punish you for that. And I think that's very, very concerning. I'm pleased, though, that more and more groups and politicians are starting to see this and buy this and recognise it. Groups like the Free Speech Union and Sex Matters and some media and some journalists and some politicians as well, who a few years ago wouldn't have gone near this subject, and now say, no, this is a serious breach of human rights. We shouldn't be criminalising this. We've put out a big report on how it would breach human rights to criminalise conversion therapy. We've also brought out a book called Banning Conversion Therapy, The Missing Evidence, dedicated website, freetotalk.org, on the subject. This is going to be the big battle for freedom, in a sense, coming up. And it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. I think the battle is still to play for and not completely lost yet, but certainly the tide is against us on it.
It really is worth disentangling that, because conversion therapy is just a euphemism, because what it is it's criminalizing faith and therapeutic based voluntary conversations if a person is confused about their gender or their sexuality.
Correct.
And they also hybridize gender and sexuality in the same thing, because you might say, okay, it might not have the highest effectiveness rate if someone wants to change their sexuality, but then to package that in with non-gender affirming therapies means that you've just got a direct road for children who say, I'm a girl, but I feel alienated from my body, to I'm going to have a mastectomy and I'm definitely identifying as a boy now.
Well, do you realise that there's already a professional ban on conversion therapy? There's this thing called the Memorandum of Understanding on Conversion Therapy, which has been signed by all the cancer organisations and the NHS, which says you must not engage in conversion therapy, which is why Tavistock, one of the whistleblowers, mentioned this and said the reason that the clinicians feel like they have to affirm a young child in their acquired gender is they're terrified of being accused of conversion therapy and therefore losing their jobs or losing their accreditation status or whatever it is. So it already is damaging children and damaging people, the very threat of the allegation of conversion therapy. If it becomes a criminal offence, that's a whole nother step further down this line, and we've got to stop it.
Yeah, that was one of the complaints as well from people like Andrew Doyle, who's spoken to Kira Bell on GB News before, and he said that the overwhelming, and this was up in the Policy Exchange report as well, I think it was about 43% of children who had gender dysphoria later desisted and then said that they were same-sex attracted eventually. A lot of the paradox...
it's actually something 80% of children who have gender confusion grow out of it through puberty, because puberty actually, forces you to recognize your body. You can't fight against the biology, you can't fight against your body, you can't fight against nature. So for the vast majority of them, actually, if you don't affirm it, without any other treatment, you don't even need therapy or anything else, just not affirming it, just letting nature take its course, they will grow out of it.
Yeah, well, the paradox of the law itself, though, is that, if you really were concerned, if you were principally concerned about gay people going to a priest or a counsellor and saying, I'm ashamed of being attracted to men, so could you talk through how I could be attracted to women? If that was what you were terrified of, then why would you then immediately also criminalise in the same bill saying children who might be confused about being attracted to their friends of the same sex are now going to be affirmed as being of the opposite sex? Because wouldn't that be eradicating gay kids in favour of trans kids? And so the entire law just doesn't make sense on principle, let alone the fact that it's just untrue.
Yes, no, correct. It is crazy. It is extremely totalitarian. It is a massive breach of human rights. We will seek to challenge such a law if it comes out on the basis of a breach of human rights.